We're ready to start our industry-sponsored presentation, and our first speaker will be Ian Davies from Johnson & Johnson. Welcome.
Thank you. So I think that's enough for the lights. If I'm going to watch people go to sleep, I'd like to actually see the lights go out. So very good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ian Davies. I work for Johnson & Johnson, and as I said earlier, we're delighted to be able to sponsor this event. I recognize that for many of you, English is not your first language. I have to tell you, I come from the north of England, a place even more beautiful than Manchester called Yorkshire, and my mother was Scottish. As a direct result of that, most of my colleagues in the south of England don't think English is my first language either. All right, so I promise I will do my very best to make myself moderately understandable. But thank you to Phil and the organisers for giving us, as sponsors, a little bit of time to talk about our companies and our products. It is something that we appreciate very much. And really, I'm really here on behalf of a group of people, this crowd here, who are the professional education, professional affairs folks that we have working for us around the world at Johnson & Johnson. So we have over 100 people. We have ophthalmologists, optometrists, opticians, we have educators, teachers, we have material scientists, a range of different disciplines, a range of different sciences. And I have the great pleasure of working with these people on a day-to-day basis to try and help explain to our customers, to work with groups like yourselves, how we can genuinely grow the contact lens business. Because ultimately that is our goal. If we can grow the contact lens business, there is enough people out there that all the companies can take their fair share of. So that's our objective as we move forward. Now, we couldn't fit all of these people onto an aeroplane, so one of whom hasn't seen this photo yet. We're delighted that Carissa and Jane could join us. I should have asked you, shouldn't I? Carissa's Education Director in the US, Jane in EMA, who've joined me for this meeting, again, two extraordinarily talented optometrists. Jane and I were actually at university together in Manchester. Clearly, she was a lot younger, and still is a lot younger than I am. She may tell you some stories about what I did as an undergraduate in Manchester. I want to go on record now to say, please do not believe them, because they are not true. Actually, some of them are slightly true, but do me a favor and don't believe them. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do for the next 2 or 3 hours. I'd like to talk for a few moments about Johnson & Johnson, put into context the company that we work for. Then I'm going to touch on Johnson & Johnson Vision Care, talk a little bit about our philosophy. And then I'm going to touch on new product philosophy, okay, how we are framing our new product portfolio for the future. And I'm going to talk specifically about a couple of individual new products. As I put this together, I thought I can either go in depth or I can take a fairly broad view. I've decided to take a fairly broad view. You will see from people over the next 2 years who are much better qualified and competent than I am, will give you a lot more information and detail about these products. We're literally in the process of launching them at the moment. I thought I'd just try and touch very briefly on them to give you a sense of where we're going. After I've done that, I'll just talk on those products and then wrap up with professional support. Does that make sense? Yeah, excellent. If I ask you questions occasionally, if you could sort of respond, it would be nice. For those of you who are suffering for jet lag, 3 o'clock is the hour. In my experience, it does not matter where you are in the world. If you have jet lag, 3 o'clock in the afternoon is the worst time. So I think Pat's talking at 3 o'clock, so I'm sure keep you wide awake from that. So let me start off and talk a little bit about Johnson & Johnson. It's a big company. It's been around for over 100 years. And it was founded, in fact, by 3 brothers, all of whom, conveniently enough, surname was Johnson. I'm not quite sure what happened to the 3rd brother. But Johnson & Johnson was based on an interesting formula, which is as relevant today as it was in 1886. Because it was founded when one of the Johnson brothers, who ran a cotton mill, went to London and went to a lecture by the surgeon Joseph Lister. And the lecture was about the problems associated with infection following surgery. And Lister was starting to realize that one of the big problems post-surgery was infection. So Robert Mead Johnson said, well, hang on, wouldn't it be cool? There is a genuine scientific need. Okay, we need to somehow create a way of dressing wounds aseptically. I run a cotton mill. If I can create a way of creating bandaging in an aseptic environment, I have the technology to do that, then I can produce a product and market a product that will actually help save lives. Or a less dramatic stop infection when somebody cuts themselves. And those are the three tenets of pretty well every Johnson & Johnson product. It's a clear medical need, new technology, and then there's the ability to communicate that to a wide range of people so that they can use it. And that's really been the basis of everything we've done. Baby powder. Has anyone ever used baby powder? You know what that was for? That was for dressing wounds in theatres of war. So again, in the early days of surgery, when somebody was chopping off part of somebody with minimal anaesthetic, it was slightly less pleasant than it could be. The person tended to get quite warm. Well, if you want to put a dressing on somebody, you need the skin to be dry. So let's create a powder that will dry up the skin and enable the adhesive to stick. So all based around a human need and a clear technology. Today, Johnson & Johnson is one of the largest, most diverse healthcare companies in the world. It's one of the 10 biggest corporations in the world. And obviously the part of it that you've been most familiar with is the contact lens business, Johnson & Johnson Vision Care business, which we'll talk about in a few moments. This photo, incidentally, of New Brunswick, any of you been in New Brunswick in winter, it does not look like that at all, ever. The other founding part of Johnson & Johnson, this was a document put together by a guy called General Johnson, grandson of one of the founders in 1940s. This is, we call it our credo. It literally is written in stone. It stayed there, unlike a recent stone pledge that came up in the UK. And it really sets out the value system for the corporation. And really, you know, as we talk, when we bring new people into the business, there's really three things that you have to do if you work in Johnson & Johnson. One is you have to adhere to this. Actually, there's only one thing that you have to do, and that's really adhere to this. Because this really lays out the priorities of the company. So number one is the customer, people who use the products. Number two is the employees. Make sure you look after your employees, develop your people. Number three is the environments in which you work. Make sure that you are good global citizens. And the theory is if you do those three things correctly, then the fourth one, which is look after your shareholders, will happen automatically. Okay, so the focus, customers, employees, and environments is very, very important. And this also means that that becomes the guide. And if we don't think that we're able to deliver what we should be doing against the customers, we make whatever tough decisions we need to make to be able to change that. So that's a little bit about Johnson & Johnson. Let's kind of go down to Johnson & Johnson Vision Care. Been around for about 26 years now, 27 years. It's a very new business from a Johnson & Johnson perspective. And this is really, this is our vision. This is what we'd like to become as a company. We'd like to bring healthy vision, everyone, everywhere, every day. And our aspiration is to help people see better. And you'll note, and I'll come back to that a little bit later, you'll note it doesn't say contact lenses. Our aspiration is, sure, we want to be successful in contact lenses, but we aspire to do more than that. And that's really what this is all about, bringing healthy vision, everyone, every day. And obviously the business, if we go back to 1988, and for any of you who were was perhaps not born or was very young in 1988, personal favour, don't tell me that, okay? Because I still think 1988 wasn't very long ago. It was just before my son was born, actually. You know, we started with disposability. We started with IACLE disposable lenses. We bought some technology from Denmark. And again, if you think about it, clear medical need. Eyes going red, infection, inflammation due to long-term deposit buildup. Technological solution, replace the lens on a regular basis. Then an ability to market that product to eye care practitioners and their patients. And over that period of time, there's been a steady stream of evolution of new products, of new modalities, daily disposable, the ability to correct our astigmatic colleagues, and a whole new range has been really exciting over the last few years around materials, material deposition, and also new polymers that we're starting to look at. So that's really, the last couple of decades, that's really what's built the Johnson & Johnson Vision Care business moving forward. So when we kind of look forward for the next 2 decades, we sort of thought, well, this notion of saying, how do we continually improve what we've done? How do we continually take what we've got and make it that little bit better? That's really what drives us all. I hope every one of us, that's why we're here. We're here to become better educators, to learn what goes on. We started, and we started with the core, started with our patients, we started with the eye. It's interesting, when this is a statue we have at the Vision Care Institute in Prague, if any of you have ever been there. This is Otto Victorley's son, unveiling a bas relief of his father when we opened the Institute about 10 years ago. And it's fair to say there wasn't a dry eye in the house when he did that. But his son, Kamel, is actually a professor of chemical engineering. And of course, it was Otto Victorley who invented soft contact lenses in 1960. I'm not going to tell you what I was doing then, it just becomes depressing. But it was Victorley also who actually said, one day I can envisage a time when a contact lens can be made in such a way that it can be thrown away on a daily basis. And wouldn't that be a healthy way to be able to see? We think about what the industry's done since then. We've continually gone through process improvements, and this is an incredibly scientific chart. You'll notice the p-value is missing and the error bars are slightly skewed, but essentially it's to illustrate the point that over the years we've continually tried to improve products. We've improved vision, we've improved comfort, we've improved a variety of different pieces. And you must have seen myself and many of my colleagues who are in this room show you compelling charts to say that we're better than we were last time, we're better than the competition, we're better than whatever was out there beforehand. So we continue to try and improve. 10 years ago, improvement was fairly easy. Because 10 years ago, a soft contact lens would maybe give you 8 out of 10 in terms of comfort. So you could make 8.5 quite easily. Then you could make 9. Then you could make 9.5. And then the statisticians amongst you will start to question, how do you actually start to make meaningful statistical differences for the average? So what we did was we had a good look, we did quite a lot of research, I'll show you in a couple of moments, and tried to sort of think about the world slightly differently. Thinking about improvement as being, we want to be better than we were before, but also we want to be better than we were before, in the sense that we want to be able to meet a wider range of patient needs. So there's one thing we're all aware of as clinicians, or very old past clinicians, no one product suits everybody. And if we can gradually pull together a portfolio of products that meets a wide range of needs, and then educate our colleagues in terms of choosing the right patients for those needs, imagine that's a pretty neat way of going forward and growing the contact lens category. So we did some of that work. We did we approached this problem from a couple of different directions. From a scientific direction, which is ongoing, which was supported by many people around the world, and also from an insight perspective. We carried out research of 12,000 contact lens wearers and potential contact lens wearers. That's quite a lot of people. We tried to understand what their needs were, what were the problems that they were facing on a day-to-day basis with their vision. And at the same time, we looked at what the physiological needs were of different patients. And what we found, and this is just some really early sort of grouping, we started to see that there were commonalities. There were groups of people who you could kind of put together. Some of whom had symptoms of dryness, some of whom had clearly presbyopic issues, some of whom just said, look, I work a long day, I'm sitting at a computer all day, and I need all day comfortable wear. Then folks who just wanted to improve the appearance of their eyes, And then those who say, well, you know, I really am working all day, I really do need lenses that will work for me all day. And we started to map out those needs. We found a load more as well. But to my colleagues in the industry, I'm sorry, that's a story for another day. We started to map those needs against the research. So well, here are specific patient needs. Now let's have a look from a product point of view and see how does a product portfolio match those needs. Make sense? So where are the relative strengths and weaknesses? We all know there's huge elements of overlap in there, but where are the relative strengths and weaknesses? And what we've done, and we're showing a lot more about this at the BCLA, was to start to map out our portfolio in such a way that rather than just saying this is better than this, it's better than this, it's better than this, actually starting to create a Venn diagram with quite a lot of overlap in the center. So if you have a patient who has these needs, these are the kind of products you should probably start with. Make sense? So that then from an education point of view, almost going back to the early days of lenses, where we really are starting to differentiate between products based on what the patient need is, based on what the ocular physiology says. And we, you know, because marketeers like nice expressions, we called it eye-inspired design. It doesn't really matter what it's called. You guys have done that for years. What it's called is less important what it does. It's finding the right product, the right patients to meet the right needs. Make sense from a philosophical point of view? So that's how we're trying to move that forward. And obviously, as we're going through that, we're discovering new science, discovering new insight, putting those together, then clearly we're going to discover some new things moving forward. So let's now move on to how we've started to put that into practice and have a look at a couple of new products specifically. One of the things we're going to start with is really talking about something that as we went through this exercise, as we did the research, we started to look at the material platforms that we have. So we have an OASIS platform that we know performs very well for a certain group of people. We also looked at the one day, actually the MOIST platform, acetylcholine with Lacrium. When we looked at that, and I'll show you some of the research that's been carried out on that, we realized that the material platform had some incredible benefits. We kind of match two things. On the one hand, we know that the Lacrium technology, the way that PVP is polymerized, it does a fantastic job at keeping moisture tight within the lens. So we hold that moisture into the lens. But we also knew, we knew that was a low modulus material, which would obviously drive comfort. But we also started to understand some work that I'll show in a couple of seconds from Lyndon and Lashman and the group in Waterloo, that also that the proteins that were being absorbed onto the lens could actually have a beneficial, potentially have some beneficial properties to them. And then the edge design, very thin edge, of course, makes the lens very, very, very comfortable. So just building on a couple of bits of the research, and you'll see this, I think, have you got a poster at BCLA on this one? I know it's, well, we're doing a workshop, you're doing a workshop on it, I think. That some of you maybe saw this at, I think it was at Arvo Academy last year, and I believe it's in press right now. There's some really nice work that Lyndon and Lashman did. And we I shouldn't tell you this, we videoed them as well, talking a little bit about this, and Lyndon's looking forward to seeing some of the videos at some stage, I do know that. But some of the work that we did was say, okay, we recognize that acetylcholine, it's a group 4 material, it's going to absorb lysozyme. But what Lashman and Lyndon and the group found out is that the majority of that lysozyme is kept in a denatured state, and that actually that may have some beneficial properties. There's still work going on in that field, but it became fairly clear that there were actually some benefits to be had from using the MOIST platform. You know, the other piece is, you know, we're in a daily wear environment, so again, some work that we did, look, just to make sure that we were maintaining the physiology of the eye as we wanted. We were able to show that effectively on daily wear, we weren't getting any significant corneal swelling. Then the sort of final piece, and this was some work that was driven by Robin Chalmers, was actually looking at and asking the question, you know, do daily disposable lenses actually, you know, what actually happens in the mass population if we fit them with daily disposables? And what Robin found with MOIST was an incredible profile of a low incidence of any adverse responses particularly with the 1 day after being moist. And the data's up here. It's been published, presented at ARVO. The rate of adverse responses, really is incredibly low. And that gives great confidence in showing the benefits of daily disposable. But combining that together gave us great confidence to say we have a material platform here that we can really drive forward in new product development. So I'm going to just touch on a couple of products. This is a multifocal lens. It's been launched at this week's British Contact Lens Association. It's going to be launched very soon in the US. We're doing some sort of market assessments at the moment. We had some meetings in Hong Kong I think a couple of weeks ago. And it's based on the Moist platform. And it again stems from science. It stems from, we know there's a clear need there. People would like to carry on wearing contact lenses as they're getting older. We got some new scientific insight, and we think this is actually going to be quite an interesting journey moving forward. The science behind it is science which, on the one hand, is you look at it and say, well, I knew that. But it's interesting when you tie that into a design perspective. So the first thing we know is that as we get older, our pupil size goes smaller. Yeah, we know that. It's observation. We see it. We're looking at the ophthalmoscope, pupil size is a bit smaller. We also find is that if you look at prescriptions, that actually myopes have got larger pupils than hyperopes. If you think about what we're trying to do then when you're putting a center near lens onto an eye, is you have to, one of the variables is the ad, which is going to be driven by the age of the person, another is going to be the prescription. Now, in the olden days of optical tooling, it was very difficult to come up with designs for a wide range of different powers. But of course, now we can model this stuff and we can actually come up with an individually designed lens based on every single power profile. And essentially what that does is it makes the balance between distance and near essentially the same for any one of those combinations. Making sense? So you'll hear, those of you at the BCLA, as you go to launch seminars, as we start to roll this out, you'll hear an awful lot more detail about that. But essentially gave us that opportunity to balance the distance and near vision. The other thing we were then able to do, and again, modeling helps us. You see how technology drives education. That now you can start to develop really cool model eyes. You can now start to see how you can get any lens surface to match exactly onto any cornea. So the other piece of work that the guys did was by looking at a combination of spheric and aspheric back surfaces, figure out how to make sure that you have smart optics lined up against the center of the cornea so that you're delivering the benefit that the product actually has. So, does it work? Well, one of the things that we're trying very hard not to do is to go out with claims that cannot be substantiated. First job in industry in 1823, or a couple of years later, was launching a contact lens called a Hydron Echelon bifocal contact lens. Anyone remember that? Thank you. I feel so much better. I really would have been very depressed if you'd all looked back. And no company has ever launched a bad contact lens ever. All right? You wouldn't do it. Every single contact lens that's ever been launched works perfectly well in a clinic with extremely well-educated practitioners in perfect conditions with a certain patient set. No company is ever going to launch a lens that doesn't work. The challenge is when it gets out there and suddenly the refraction isn't quite as good, or the level of care isn't quite as good, or heaven forbid, people don't follow the fitting guide. But that's when lenses start to cause problems. But certainly the initial responses we've been getting this are extraordinarily good. They're extraordinarily good in the sense that we can't launch in as many countries as we'd like to, as quickly as we would, simply because we want to make sure that we've got the products coming out at the time. But we are getting high numbers of people with 6/6 or 20/20 or 1/0. We are getting a good number of people who are able to see to read in that. And the proof of that is in the testing and the wearing. but also in the fact that it takes relatively few lenses to get to that success rate, and that's also a very important point. So as we're putting together our presbyopic piece, there's really three things that we're going to be talking about. One is the moist platform, and the work that shows that we have a really robust material platform. The second is around the technology, which really makes sure that we're delivering crisp optics, center of the pupil, that is designed in such a way to get the balance on the retina. And then the third is making it easy to fit. If it takes more than two lenses, it ain't going to work. So what practitioners want is something you can pop a pair of lenses on. Most occasions it works. If it doesn't, one change, and then call it a day. It's very important to make that successful. So you'll be seeing a lot more about this lens coming out over the next over the months ahead. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and this is kind of important, those of you who are working in Asia, I apologize for the next 5 minutes because you know this stuff, okay? But it's all around how you can enhance the shape, the size, and the appearance of your eye, but not by turning a brown eye blue. So we know the history of coloured lenses where we're turning brown eyes blue, and there's a market for it, there's no question at all. But if you ask most women, I know I'm now on very, very dodgy ground, okay? This could go horribly wrong, all right? But one of the things I remember my wife saying to my daughter, you notice how I'm now saying it's nothing to do with me, it's my wife's fault, okay? Passing the blame, was the art of good makeup is to make it invisible. You know, one of the arts of good makeup is to make someone say, wow, you look fantastic. You look tremendous, you look terrific, without necessarily knowing all the secrets. Well, that's the way that my wife justified. Anyway, moving on rapidly away from that. What we found was that, particularly women, but some men as well, you know, were saying, you know, it'd be lovely to enhance the appearance of my eyes. And this is incredibly common knowledge in Asia, particularly if you go to Japan, if you go to China, where limbal rings, lenses which essentially are clear across most of the surface, but essentially just apparently increase the horizontal, the visible iris diameter, are incredibly popular. Because what it does is it makes the eye look bigger, makes the eye look more beautiful. And certainly if you walk around outside a high school in China or Japan, at my age, you get some very funny looks, particularly when you look at every girl in the eye when they walk by. And you'll just see the number of girls who are wearing limbal rings to make the eyes just stand out that much more attractive. And we were curious to say, we know it works on the Asian eye, how well could you create something that would have a similar effect on the Caucasian eye, to actually bring out the appearance of the eye. So this is what we've done with a product called One Day After You Define. Done a couple of different designs. I won't go into great detail on those. But essentially what those do is they give a very crisp appearance to the limbus and just darken the area around the limbus. And what that does is it just makes the eye stand out a little bit clearer, makes the eye stand out a little bit more beautifully. Now, since which time I've been looking at many beautiful eyes, and it's interesting when you look at eyes. You look at eyes with you know, acknowledged models. One of the things you'll often see is that there is definition around the limbus, and that's essentially what these products are doing. They're giving that definition around the limbus. It's a lot more complicated explaining it to a man than a woman. It's a lot more complicated, a man like me explaining it to anyone, but it really does make quite a nice difference. It really enhances the iris, and also because it makes a difference, it makes people feel better. Now, what we've been able to do, and there are a lot of manufacturers in Asia who literally just print, on the front surface of the lens whatever pattern they want, and that's caused some problems over the years. What we've been able to do is to actually put the colouring, put the material design into the matrix of the lens, which we can then show it isn't going to leak, so it's perfectly safe, but also it's not going to impact the oxygen transmission because it's built on that moist platform. So you'll be seeing quite a lot more of these. Now, I'd encourage you to, excuse the pun, open your eyes to the concept. Slightly different from what we've perhaps used to doing, but it really can make a big difference. We've been getting some very nice feedback from practitioners who've really embraced that. Does that make sense? So a couple of things. One is trying to go after presbyopia, using a moist material. The other area is to try and go after eye beauty, but both ideas stem from a very clearly defined patient need, new science, and then probably particularly with this type of product, the ability to explain that to patients so they understand that there's an option there. That goes right back to the heritage of Johnson & Johnson. So in the last 4.5 minutes, let me just touch on the way that these complete that picture. So for moist now, one day after the moist platform, that gives us spherical, astigmatic, presbyopic, and beauty or appearance type product. Again, each one of those based on a clear need. So I want to get you back on time. Let me just wrap up a little bit to talk about professional support, talk about the work that the team that we have working around the world does, and being at this meeting is one of the areas that we're really keen and hopefully can demonstrate our support to you. The thing that's probably been closest to my heart over the last 10 years, certainly in Europe, was the development of our vision care institutes. Have any of you ever been to a vision care institute somewhere? A reasonable number of hands there. So it's a great project. It is the most fun project I've been involved in because I'm a boy and I like playing with toys. And the technology gets better every time and you can do more stuff. But we have these range of facilities that we have around the world. That we're also, as we're going into the next phase of this, is also looking at the way that we can learn from our colleagues in our surgical businesses to start to look at the way things like telemedicine can work. And this is a program that when we started the Institute program, we shamelessly stole it from our surgical colleagues in Johnson & Johnson. Because if any of you ever had I'm not going to ask that question. If you have minimally invasive surgery, it's great. But when we as a company introduced minimally invasive surgery, surgeons didn't know how to do it. And that's not great. Okay, so what we did was we actually started to build surgical simulators so we can teach surgeons how to actually do the surgery. And then, of course, they're able to buy the products. And these are the simulators that you showed earlier are fascinating. The medical ones are great. I removed someone's gallbladder recently. Unfortunately, I killed them, but detail. I was supposed to seal it first. But the Institute program is very much up and running and will continue to be, I think, one of the key cornerstones of the professional program that Johnson & Johnson Vision Care are going to run. The other thing is that we've worked very hard. And again, if we look at the team that we have working for us, I would say 80% of those people came from a direct educational background. And so these guys are, really tremendous at coming up with educational assets. Whether this is a program that really Jane drove quite heavily across the UK, running it in Russia as well, I think, at the moment. Education around communication, conversations in practice. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about on Wednesday. Is the importance of communication to business and how important it is that as a core skill, people get very, very, very good at it. And it's interesting. Craig mentioned about the course that you're running is very much more, it seems to me, about getting people to be really good optometrists. Now, hoping that they're also good academics. That balance, what are we training people to do? To be good clinicians or good academics? Kind of interesting balance. But we're doing a lot of work on that area. The other thing is we brought in our own video editing internally a couple of years ago, producing instructional videos on the slit lamp. We've started to translate those. It's another program we've got going. And finally, we worked with Nath on the grading scales that we did. We turned it into an app, and then we thought we needed to turn the app into something that worked on a more global basis. So we turned our blue eyes brown so that it became a little bit more usable around the world. So those are examples of some of the educational initiatives that we've been doing. The other piece is supporting organisations like this, whether it's IACLE, you can see some of the organisations there. I'm sorry if yours isn't up there, the American Academy, AOA, European Academy, we've been trying to get that's trying to support that group as it's getting going. And then, of course, the British Contact Lens Association, which we've now supported for 27 years. And actually, I remember going to the first BCLA meeting, the VistaCon, as it was then, known to everyone, was presenting at. They had one product, VistaMark Toric. Anyone remember that? All right, thank you, Jay. Very early days. We're very proud of the association we built with the BCLA. We're very proud of the association we have with IACLE. Proud of it for two things. One is to watch an organisation grow. Talking with Des over lunch, in the olden days, there was always the joke of at the end of every IACLE dinner, everyone used to stand up and tell a joke. Okay, I don't think most of the jokes could be told nowadays, but there was a very collegiate atmosphere. Watching how this organisation grown has been, really been very rewarding to feel that even if it's just a tiny little piece of it, likewise in the BCLA, to watch those things grow is just tremendous. If I wrap up now and trying to get your meeting back onto time, this is one of the early slides I showed. It's about bringing healthy vision to everyone every day. What I said was that you'll notice the word contact lenses isn't in there. And sometimes these mission statements sound a little bit sort of hypothetical or theoretical. But much as I love contact lenses, and trust me, I love contact lenses, they have fed and clothed me and my family for the last 30-odd years, so I'm extremely fond of contact lenses. Most of us started this profession thinking about more than just contact lenses. We started because we were interested in improving people's vision. It's really where it all started from. So one of the things we've been able to do over the last few years that we're very proud of is trying to make a real difference. Trying to make a real difference to people who may never wear contact lenses, but are in need of vision care. We've done that through a couple of programs. One is the infancy program we established with the AOA, which is all about making sure that the babies get an eye check as soon as they possibly can in their lives. That's a program that we continue to support with the AOA. And another one, which doesn't very often get a lot of press, but I particularly passionate of mine, is a program that we set up with the Lions Club International Foundation about 12 years ago, called Sight for Kids. And what this program does is essentially a screening program, but it's a screening program that makes sure that if there is an identified need, we then have a way of addressing that need, either through surgery, we work with the local Lions Hospital, or prescribing glasses, or whatever else that may be. This slide is 2 years out of date now. So to date, we've been able to support screening of 22 million children who otherwise wouldn't have had an opportunity to have their eyes screened. And of that 22 million, as you can imagine, there is a reasonable proportion who go on to need to wear glasses, need surgery, or need medical intervention. And I think those are the things that really make a difference. Not belittling the world of the contact lenses, but that's how we're trying to make a difference in what we do on a day-by-day basis. So, Phil, Shazad, IACLE, thank you again very much for giving us this opportunity. What I hope I've been able to do over the last 42 minutes is to give you a little bit of a sense of Johnson & Johnson, a little bit of a sense of the heritage, but also this notion of starting with a clearly identified medical need, technological solution, and then the marketing prowess to be able to drive that. Talk a little bit about vision care. Again, same model. Vision care driven by innovation, driven by new products. And our philosophy moving forward, which is to make sure that we broaden the number of people who are available for new products for the future. Touched a little bit on the way that we've taken our Moist platform and built on that with a presbyopic and a lens solution, and also a loose solution that will help enhance the beauty of eyes. And then finished off, I hope, by giving you a sense of the professional support that we hope to be able to continue to provide to IACLE, to organisations like IACLE and your local professional bodies, but I think as importantly, the work that we're trying to do to really get at some of the core problems that are facing the world in terms of access to healthcare, access to eye care, and giving everyone an opportunity to see better. So with that, I would like to finish with a big thank you. That one was the biggest one I could find. There you go. Thank you very much.